The notification flashed across my phone screen at 3:47 a.m. Domain foodwithgrace.com has been deleted. I'd been expecting it, but my heart still skipped a beat. 5 years of work, over 2 million followers, and a thriving business, all seemingly erased with a few keystrokes. My name is Grace Mitchell, and my ex-husband had just tried to destroy my career. I was in my kitchen, testing recipes for my upcoming cookbook when the message came through. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally making his favorite dish, a spicy Korean fried chicken that had gone viral last year, when he decided to pull the trigger on his revenge plan. Another text lit up my screen. How does it feel to lose everything? Maybe you should have thought twice before exposing my affair and the divorce proceedings. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up the phone. Mark had always been vindictive, but this was a new low. He'd waited until now, 3 months after our divorce was finalized, thinking he'd caught me off guard. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment ever since I found lipstick on his collar 6 months ago. My blog, Food with Grace, had started as a hobby, just a way to share my love of cooking after leaving my corporate job. But it had grown into something beyond my wildest dreams. My recipes were featured in major magazines, I had a cookbook deal with a top publisher, and brands were constantly reaching out for collaborations. Mark had hated it at first, telling me I was wasting my time. Nobody makes real money from blogs, he'd said dismissively. Then the checks started coming in, bigger than his salary as a middle manager. Suddenly, he was very interested in our business. I made him an administrator on the site, a decision I'd regretted the moment I caught him with his assistant in our bed. The divorce had been ugly, with him threatening to make me pay for ruining his reputation. I'd known then that he'd try to hurt me through the blog. So I planned accordingly. Another text. Your followers are already noticing. Check Twitter. I did. #FoodWithGrace was trending, with concerned followers wondering why the site was down. My inbox was flooding with messages from worried fans and panicked brand partners. Time to put my plan into action. I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Recipes to Test. Inside was another folder, Backup Plan. With a few clicks, I initiated the restoration process I'd set up months ago. While that ran in the background, I called Sophie, my best friend and tech guru extraordinaire. It's happening, I said when she answered, despite the early hour. That bastard finally did it. She sounded fully awake, starting the countermeasures now. Sophie had helped me prepare for this, setting up multiple backups and a shadow site that could go live within hours. We documented everything. Every change Mark made to the site, every attempt to access the backend, every threatening email he'd sent. How long? I asked, watching the progress bar on my screen. 2 hours to restore everything. Another hour to redirect the domain. By breakfast time, Food with Grace will be back, bigger and better than ever. I smiled, thinking of the surprise waiting for Mark. And the other thing. Already in motion, the lawyers have everything they need. While my site was being restored, I pulled up the document I'd been compiling for months. Screenshots of Mark's threats, records of his attempts to sabotage my business, evidence of his affair. Everything that proved this was a calculated attack. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Diana, my publisher. Grace, what's happening? The site is temporarily down. I cut in smoothly. Technical difficulties. It'll be back up in a few hours. Are you sure? Because we have the cookbook promotion. Diana, I said firmly, trust me. Everything is under control. After reassuring her, I posted a quick message to my social media accounts. Dear followers, Food with Grace is experiencing some technical issues. Don't worry, we'll be back soon with some exciting changes. In the meantime, who's hungry for some Korean fried chicken? I attached a photo of the dish I'd just finished, perfectly crispy, glazed with a sauce that had taken me years to perfect. The responses were immediate. Can't wait for the site to be back. That chicken looks amazing. We trust you, Grace. Mark's next text came an hour later. Trying to do damage control? It's too late. Everything's gone. Recipes, photos, subscriber list, everything. I typed back, thanks for the heads up, making chicken. Want the recipe? His response was immediate. Are you insane? Your career is over. Is it? Better check the site in about an hour. I could almost feel his confusion through the phone. He thought he'd destroyed me, But he'd forgotten something crucial about who I was, who I'd always been. Before I was a food blogger, I was a project manager for a Fortune 500 company. I specialized in risk assessment and contingency planning. Mark used to make fun of my obsessive attention to detail, my need to have backup plans for my backup plans. Those same skills had saved my business. While the site restoration continued, I made a few more calls. First to my lawyer, confirming that everything was documented for the restraining order and civil suit we'd be filing. Then to my team, the photographers, recipe testers, and content managers who'd helped build Food with Grace into what it was. They'd all been briefed on this possibility. Everyone knew their roles. At 6:45 a.m., exactly 3 hours after Mark's attack, Sophie called. "We're ready," she said. "Want to do the honors?" I sat at my kitchen counter, laptop open, the smell of Korean fried chicken still lingering in the air. Do it. With a few keystrokes, Food with Grace was back online, not just restored, but improved. The new site was faster, more secure, and featured an interface we'd been working on in secret for months. Every recipe was there, every photo, every subscriber. Plus some new content we'd been saving for this moment, including a video series on rising from the ashes, cooking Phoenix-inspired dishes from around the world. My phone started buzzing immediately. Followers celebrating the site's return. Brands impressed by the smooth handling of the technical difficulties. Food magazines wanting to cover the story. And Mark. His messages became increasingly frantic. "What did you do? How is this possible? This isn't over." I waited until 7 a.m. exactly to respond. "You're right, it's not over. Check your email." I knew what he'd find in his inbox. A letter from my lawyer detailing the criminal charges for cyber attacks and the civil suit for attempted business sabotage. Every threat he'd made, every action he'd taken, meticulously documented. The final blow was the press release, scheduled to go out in 1 hour. Food with Grace announces major expansion. We'd be launching a cooking school, a kitchenware line, and yes, that cookbook deal had just been doubled. My phone rang, Mark again. I let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on plating the Korean fried chicken for its photo shoot. The sauce glistened perfectly, garnished with sesame seeds and green onions. Sophie arrived just as I was finishing the styling. "Want to hear something funny?" she asked, setting up her camera. His attempt to delete the site actually triggered our security protocol. We now have evidence of exactly how he did it. Timestamps, IP addresses, everything. I adjusted a piece of chicken slightly. He never did understand that destroying something doesn't make you powerful. Building does. Speaking of building, Sophie grinned. "Wait until he sees what else we've been working on." She was referring to our biggest project yet, one we kept completely under wraps. While Mark had been plotting to destroy Food with Grace, we've been developing an entire digital cooking platform. The attack on my site would now serve as the perfect launch publicity. As Sophie photographed the chicken, I checked the site metrics. Traffic was already higher than usual, with thousands of supportive comments pouring in. My followers weren't just staying, they were rallying around me. Another text from Mark. "You think you're so clever. This isn't the end." I finally replied, "You're right, it's a beginning. By the way, the chicken recipe you loved so much, I've improved it. But don't worry, you can find it on the site. It's under Sweet Revenge." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. While Mark seethed and sent increasingly desperate threats, Food with Grace was experiencing unprecedented growth. The attempted takedown had become a rallying point, with my story spreading through social media like wildfire. "You have to see these numbers," Sophie said, bursting into my kitchen where I was filming a new recipe video. "We've gained 500,000 followers in 3 days." I kept my focus on the camera as I demonstrated the perfect way to fold dumplings. "How's the engagement?" "Off the charts. That Rising from the Ashes series, people are obsessed. The Phoenix metaphor is really resonating." Of course it was. Everyone loves a comeback story, especially one involving food and revenge served with style. My phone buzzed. Another email from Mark's lawyer, demanding we take down the press release about the site attack. I forwarded it to my legal team without reading it fully. They'd been expecting this. "Grace?" Sophie was looking at her tablet with concern. "Mark's posted something. You should see this." I finished crimping the last dumpling before checking the screen she held out. There it was, a lengthy post on LinkedIn of all places, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife who had manipulated the narrative of our divorce. According to sources close to the situation, he'd written, Food with Grace was jointly developed, with significant contributions from both parties during the marriage. I actually laughed out loud. Significant contributions? He once suggested I make spaghetti more authentic by adding ketchup. Sophie wasn't smiling. He's claiming partial ownership of the brand. Let him. I turned back to my dumplings, placing them carefully in the steamer. We have years of documentation proving he had nothing to do with content creation. Plus, I pulled up a folder on my laptop labeled Insurance. Inside were hundreds of screenshots, every dismissive comment he'd made about the blog on social media, every email where he'd mocked my little cooking hobby, every text where he complained about me wasting time on recipe development. I saved everything, I explained. From day one. Call it a chef's instinct for keeping good records. Sophie scrolled through the folder, her eyes widening. There's even a video. From 3 years ago, Christmas dinner. He had quite a lot to say about how anyone could run a food blog, and how I was lucky he let me play around with this nonsense instead of getting a real job. I smiled. Mind if he was going through a documentary phase? Filmed the whole thing. You're scary sometimes, you know that? No, I corrected, checking the temperature on my steamer. I'm prepared. That preparation was about to pay off in ways even I hadn't anticipated. While Mark was trying to claim ownership of Food with Grace, our new digital platform was in final testing. We'd named it Feast, a comprehensive cooking education platform that would make my blog look like a small side project in comparison. The next morning, I had a meeting with my publisher about the cookbook. Diana was practically bouncing with excitement. The pre-orders are incredible, she announced. We need to double the initial print run. What about the bonus chapter? I asked. She grinned. You mean the one about rebuilding after betrayal, complete with Phoenix-themed recipes, already laid out and ready to go? The timing couldn't be better. She was right. The publicity from Mark's attack had created the perfect launch platform for everything we'd been developing. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Judge granted the restraining order. Mark can't contact you or access any Food with Grace properties. Another piece falling into place. But Mark had one last card to play. That evening, as I was testing recipes for Feast's launch menu, I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Grace Mitchell? A woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Rachel from The Times. I'm working on a story about your ex-husband's claims regarding Food with Grace. He's provided some interesting documentation. My hand tightened around the phone. What kind of documentation? Emails discussing blog strategy, some early recipe notes with his comments. He's claiming he was the real creative force behind the brand's success. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Of course he'd go to the press. Of course he tried to manipulate the narrative. Ms. Rachel, I said calmly, I'd be happy to discuss this with you. In fact, I think I have some materials you'd find very interesting. Would you like to come to my studio tomorrow? I'll be testing recipes for my new platform. We can talk while I cook. There was a pause. New platform. Oh yes, I smiled. And I make excellent dumplings. The next day, Rachel sat at my kitchen counter, recorder running, as I demonstrated the dumpling technique I'd perfected over years of practice. So, she said, watching me fold perfect pleats into the wrapper, tell me about these claims your ex-husband is making. I gestured to the laptop set up nearby. Before we get to that, I'd like to show you something. For the next hour, I walked her through everything. The documented history of Food with Grace, the evidence of Mark's dismissal of the blog, the video from that Christmas dinner. I showed her the threatening texts he'd sent before and after the divorce, the records of his attempted site takedown, the paper trail of my sole ownership and development of the brand. And now, I said, setting a plate of perfectly steamed dumplings in front of her. Let me tell you about Feast. By the time Rachel left, she had a very different story than the one Mark had tried to sell. 2 days later, her article ran in the Times. From blog to empire. How one chef turned betrayal into business success. The piece detailed not just Mark's attempted sabotage, but the full scope of what we built and what we were about to launch. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Feast's waitlist grew to over 100,000 people overnight. The cookbook pre-orders doubled again, and Food with Grace, we passed 3 million followers. Mark's final text came the next day. You planned this. All of it. I was in my test kitchen, filming a series on traditional dumpling techniques from around the world for Feast's launch. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very skills he dismissed as a hobby had built an empire. No, Mark, I typed back. You plan to destroy something. I plan to build something better. Then I blocked his number and turned back to my dumplings. 6 months later, I stood on a stage at the International Food Media Awards, accepting the award for digital innovation in culinary education. Feast had revolutionized online cooking education, while Food with Grace had become the gold standard for culinary content creation. Success, I said in my acceptance speech, is like a well-developed recipe. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. Sometimes the ingredients life hands you seem bitter at first, but with the right technique, you can transform them into something extraordinary. The audience applauded, but I wasn't finished. And to anyone who's ever been told their dreams are just a hobby, their passion is just a waste of time, their goals are unrealistic, remember this. The same fire that others use to try to destroy you can become the flame that helps you rise, stronger and more determined than ever. Later that night, at the celebration dinner, Sophie raised her glass. To the phoenix of the food world, she toasted, and to perfect dumplings. I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. To being prepared. You know, she said thoughtfully, Mark really did you a favor. Without his attack, we might have rolled everything out more slowly. True, I nodded. Sometimes your enemies become your best motivators. As we enjoyed the meal, including a special batch of phoenix-shaped dumplings I created for the occasion, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. Mark had tried to erase my work, thinking he could destroy years of effort with a few keystrokes. Instead, he'd helped launch the next phase of my career, proving once again that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others build. It's about building something they never imagined possible, and I was just getting started. The next morning, as I reviewed the final edits for my cookbook, a notification popped up on my phone. A news alert about Mark. His company had demoted him following the publicity from his failed attack on Food with Grace. Apparently, they didn't appreciate his approach to conflict resolution. I closed the alert without reading further. His story wasn't my concern anymore. I had recipes to develop, classes to teach, and an empire to run. After all, success is the best revenge, especially when served with perfect dumplings.